Can you please check with others? Then we'll start. What was the participant count in the soft skill session? Is it the same 11 to 12 or is it different? Same 3 to 4 more. Okay. Okay, fine. So, anyways, we'll start for the people over here. And can you guys do a small recap saying what have we discussed in our previous session? What have we discussed in our previous session, that is yesterday?
Generic classes and generic methods.
Generic class, generic method,
Then
generic constructors. Then we started up with the array list. I just told you about the list interface, and we started up with the array list implementation. I hope there are no further doubts in that, right? If you are clear with yesterday's concept, type clear in your chat. Okay, so what is the syntax for your generic? What is the syntax? How do we mention that you are going to give a generic input?
using diamond brackets.
Yes, we go mentioning the diamond bracket. And if you wanted to use it on a class, method, or a constructor, give it on the respective location. Okay, good. So what are the needs? Like, have you guys done a research saying like what is generic? How does it works? How does it helpful? Something like that? Done any research? Okay, fine. Not a problem. Okay, yes, Manish, tell me. Okay, so not a problem. So in case if you have not done a research about it, please do a research. Whatever we are having a discussion over here, I'm just trying to make you understand these are the different concepts, these are the different perspectives, and these are the approaches which you wanted to know about it when it comes to technical concepts. Okay. So how will you guys differentiate one among other, like each other is, you put some extra efforts, you practice it, you do some research and upskill yourself. That differentiates you from other. Okay, that is very, very important. Now, moving on with our yesterday's continuation, let me share my Eclipse first. Okay, let me move on to your workspace. Yeah, so just give me a minute, it is sharing. Is my Eclipse screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So yesterday we had an implementation, I mean a example class which implements your array list, and we had seen some methods like add, remove, isempty, size in our yesterday session. Followed with the same set of inputs, we are going to learn some more methods available under your list interface. Now in case, okay, I wanted to retrieve any specific input, okay, then this is a well-known method anyway, I'll implement it. You go with a method called get. Okay. So get method will always receive an integer value as your input, I mean argument, and that is always the index number. Now, for example, if I wanted to know what is the input in my index number 5, then I mentioned that, so you get your output in your index 5. Okay. There is no 5 inputs. 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We do have it, right? Which line is it throwing an error? Okay. Okay, after removal, there is no 5 input. Okay, there is no 5th index. Got it? So are you guys understanding why did we get an exception here? Yes. Guys, don't be silent.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so maybe for the people others who are not aware, we had n number of inputs, but here I have done 2 removal operation which reduces the index number. Now when I say index 1 or 2, I will be getting answer because that is available. Okay, so index is going to be 10 and you get that 10 as your output. But previously when I gave 5, we had only 3 index, and I'm tried fetching the 5th index value, which thrown me an exception. Okay, so you should always make sure before your retrieval operation what was the updated index value, and make sure you are giving the right one. Now in case if you wanted to know the index of a input, giving index we get value, accepted. Giving value, can we get the index number? The answer is yes. So this again we would have seen in the string concept. Does anyone remember what is a method which helps us to understand or find the element of your specified index? Index of your specified value. Does anyone remember the method name? Index of. Good. So here, when I say list dot index of, there are 2 methods available, which is index of and the last index of. So since here we have a duplication, you might be in a need of finding the index of the repeated value, and in that case if you want the first one you can go with index of. If you want the last occurrence, then you can go with last index of. So okay, first if I say index of, okay, and I'll give the input as high. Okay, so now when I run my code, I get the index which is 1 because high is in my first index. Okay, similarly, if I say 10, I told you, it ends up giving you the first occurrence. See here, Even though you have 10 two times in your input, it ends up giving you 0 as your output because first occurrence of 10 was in the 0th index and you get 0. So index of is a method which ends up giving you the respective index of your mentioned value, and that will be the first occurrence in case of duplicate input. Clear for everyone?
Yes, ma'am. If we give remove 10, will both the 10 will be removed?
Okay, that is what I told you. When you wanted to do a removal operation, when it comes to input, okay, for example, here we have 10, which is a numerical value. So in that case, if you enter 10, what will be considered here? Will it be considering the value or the index number?
Index number.
Index number. So there will be no confusion when it comes to numerical values. In case if you have a duplication of a string, the first occurrence alone will be deleted. See here, I'll say list dot add, and I'll give one more input, which is high. And when I run my code, okay, this one is an error. Okay, I'll remove all this. So this is your input, correct? Now, in case if I wanted to remove high and could you see the first occurrence alone deleted? You have high here and high here, but after removal, only the first occurrence was deleted. Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Any other further doubts?
No, ma'am.
Okay, great. So now this is about your methods. Now I'm going to do one more operation. Tell me what or how does it works? Collections dot sort. And you're going to tell you wanted to sort the inputs in your list. Now when I run my code, what would be my output? What will be the output? Just guess it out. Don't be silent. Okay, I consider that silence you are not aware. And now when I run my code, what is happening? At least have a look of your console and tell me what is happening. Guys, am I audible? Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, yeah. So just tell me what is happening in your code.
Maybe we can't sort strings and integers.
Okay, so we are in a position to sort out a variable which has different data types. So in that case, you are getting what? It is not allowed, accepted, but what is happening? Is it an error or an exception? That is what my question.
It is an exception.
It is an exception. Okay, what type of exception?
Type mismatch.
Class cast exception.
Okay, yes, it is a class cast exception and it's a runtime exception. Okay, so do we get any indication of a mistake in our line? No. Okay, so now in case, okay, if you wanted to sort it, okay, maybe what I'll do is I will not add the string inputs and boolean inputs. And here I'll say 50. And here I will say 30. Okay, now I will remove this. Maybe I'll remove all this. Okay, so now when I run my code, you could see the sorting. As per your guess, yes, it is right. You cannot sort a multiple input data type input. Could you do that? Is sorting happening? After sorting, I did not print it, so you couldn't see the result. So here, are you able to see the sorted output?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so always make sure sort, it is a method. In case if you wanted to sort it, you make sure all your inputs of a similar type. Only then the sorting can happen. When I say similar type, it can be all integer, all float, all string, all double. But it should not be a mixed up of everything. That is very, very important. And we will continue with our next methods in our next implementation, which is what is the next implementable class of your list interface?
Linked list.
There are 2 to 3 implementable classes which I told you yesterday.
Linked list.
Linked list, okay. What is the next one?
Vector and stack.
Vector, okay. So we will create a class with the help of linked list and we'll try understanding about it. And I am creating a separate class for your linked list. I'll say linked list demo, which will have public static void main. And I will create a variable. And in your yesterday session, I went up with the list variable. I mean list, with the help of list variable, I pointed my object. Today, I'm going to give the implementable class variable itself. So I'll say linked list. An object is created. I'll add the permission and I'll create the variable of linked list itself. I'll tell LL. Okay, if I wanted to make generic, here I'll give the diamond bracket. And to the right side, it is mandatory for you to mention what type of input. And to the left side, it is mandatory. And to the right side, it is optional. Okay, if you want, you can give it. Or if you do not want, not a problem. Is that clear? Now, I will add input. I will say some random input since it's numerical. I'll go with some random values to be stored. And all this I have already explained you. So I'm directly typing it out over here. So now when I print LL, I'll be getting the output in the order of insertion. That is very, very important. So make sure you are looking into what type of variable is that and determine how does the output will be printed. Okay. Now here, you might ask me, ma'am, what is the difference to array list and linked list? Yes, there is a major difference in the type of storage, but I wanted you to do a research on that. So I will believe that it stays in your mind for a longer time. Anyway, here I'll read it out. So this linked list is a doubly linked list. We know that how double linked list works in your data structures, right? With a node format. A node will be having a value and the reference of the next node, correct? That is how the nodes will be allocated in your data structure one. If you're not aware, yeah, the understanding is yes. So similarly, here also doubly linked list type of storage is allowed for your linked list. Okay, an array list will store inputs in the form of regular arrays concept along with the concept of collection. Okay, so that's the first difference which I would like to add on here as of now with respect to storage. Okay, there are much more differences available, much more inputs which you should be aware of it. I want every one of you to do a research on that. Okay, now adding on, right now we have used only add method, correct? Now you too have some more methods saying add first. See here, you have add method, you have add all method, and you have add first, you have add last. So what is this add first? Whatever input you add, that will be always added to your first position. See here, I'll add first of 200, and when I say LL to be printed, could you see 200 added to your first position?
Yes, ma'am.
So add first is a method which will always add the expected or the respective inputs in your first position. And add last will always add the input in the last position. So you should be aware of it. See here, you get your output. I mean the input stored in your last position. So now this is an add-on to the previous methods which we have seen. Similarly, if you wanted to use get method, we have get first and get last. So you can go see here get method, get first method and get last method. So get first will always get the 0th index. In case if you wanted to retrieve your first, I mean the 0th index value, then either you can go with the get method by mentioning the index number or call the get first method. Okay. If you want the last one, LL dot get last, and you'll get the last index value which is 100 over there. And similarly, you have for remove first and remove last also. What is this add all? I'll tell you. So now here I would like to create one more variable. I'll say LL1. Okay. Now what I'll say is LL dot add all method. I'll call add all method and I'll say LL1. What is this understanding is whatever input in LL1, maybe I'll give a name as LL1 like this. Okay. So now whatever input in LL1, okay, will be stored in LL. And when I print LL, you will be getting the updated value. Now, do we have any inputs in LL1?
No.
No. So when I try printing it, you get the output of LL alone. Okay. Similarly, see here, I will do an add. I'll say LL1, LL1, LL1. And I'll say we have added 10, 20, 40 and 60. So I'll say 30, 70 and 80. So now see, have a look. Could you see after 100, 30, 70 and 80 is added?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So whatever the variable is in your argument, the input stored in that variable will be added to the variable through which we called the method. And where does it get added? At the end always. Okay. So in case, if I wanted to print LL1, what would be my output?
30, 70, 80.
80, 30, 70 and 80, because it is making one more copy only. It is not getting removed. So it will also be available. So since we are calling the method with LL, the values are getting added. Now, in case if I do not want to add at the end, I wanted to add from a specific location, then I can say 2, LL1 means in the second index or from the second index, I want this values to be added. Now see here. Could you see 30, 70 and 80 at the end, or could you see from the second index?
Second index.
Second index, correct? So from the second index, how much ever input we have, that much ever input will be added. Then the rest of your inputs will be added. So add all method can be used in two ways. Either you can just tell add all, or you can tell add all in which location. Is everyone clear with this? Yes, no?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Now,
Yes, ma'am.
the next step is, this is about getting your collection of output. In case if you wanted to do iteration, tell me what are the possible ways of iteration we have. I've told you in the introduction session. What are the possible ways of iteration?
For loop. Is it that?
Loop. Okay, use the chat box to give your answers.
For loop, for each loop, iterator, list iterator.
For loop, for each loop, using iterator and list iterator, correct? So now using for loop, for each loop, we know and we have seen some examples. We'll come across with certain examples which helps you to understand about list iteration and iterator. Iterator and list iterator. So for that, since this is linked list, I will go with list iterator first. I will first call the list iterator method. Okay, I'll call the list iterator method. And I wanted to iterate it and store it in where? I wanted to store it in a iterator variable. So I'll say list iterator li, and I'll get the permission. I'll add under the util package. And since your LL variable is of integer type, I can also mention the generic over here as integer. It is done. Next, what would you do? You will just write the while loop. You will say while li dot has next. Then you wanted to print li dot next. Now, if you run your code, could you see your output one by one? Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So this is using list iterator. In case if you wanted to do the same for your iterator, what will you do? Nothing. Exactly the same. Instead of calling your list iterator an iterator, you will call the iterator alone. And you get the permission. Okay, it's not coming up with suggestion. Did I make duplicate variable? Okay. I'll say I alone. Okay. And I'll get Java util package to be added. See here, you get the same output using iterator. And here I should change I. And here also I should change I. Maybe I'll remove this so that you'll see the difference. it ends up giving you the same output. Is that clear? The syntax is
Yes,
very,
ma'am.
very simple. Yeah. So the syntax is very, very simple. Choose the variable which you wanted to iterate. Then call the type of iteration which you wanted to perform. Accordingly, call the method. And you wanted to store it in a variable, a local variable. Create the variable of a similar type. And check is there any input. If yes, print it and repeat the process until there is or end of your input. Okay. So this is about your iteration. Now here, I will again write the sorting collections dot sort. I wanted to sort LL. So now when I run my code, after that I should print it. So in that case, I get my input in the increasing order. Clear? Okay. Now here, what is the most important thing is in case if we go with similar type of input, yes, it is good. You are able to do it. But what if you are going with a different type of input? Maybe not different. When we speak about different type, I mean to say an object type. These are all primitive type of input. Correct? Even though string being a non-primitive data type, it is a predefined one only. What if I wanted to sort it in with the help of person? Maybe I will copy this person class and I'll paste over here. Okay. And here I'm creating one more linked list variable. And instead of giving integer, I would like to say the generic type is going to be person. Now, how will I add input? I've told you this already. How should I add input? Whenever you are mentioning a generic to be of user defined class, then how do you pass an input of a class? By creating an object. You should say new person. And what do you have inside your person class? You have name and age. So here you have to give a name and give a age. And this is LL person. So this is how you give inputs in case if you make a generic to be a user defined class. Okay. Now, if you want, just give me a minute. Okay, yeah. So let's continue. So in case if you are making a generic to be of a user defined type, make sure you are passing your input as your object. Okay. So in case if you wanted to give multiple inputs, just add as many you want. Okay. So I'll say in some names, I'll say let me choose one name from the Rakshit. Okay. Okay. And I'll say the age is going to be 24. Okay. Now, in case if I wanted to sort this collections dot sort and I wanted to sort person, what do you think? What happens? Now here, how does the sorting happens? Yes, Rakshit, please carry on.
Alphabetical order.
Alphabetical order. Okay, let me run. What is happening? What is happening? It's a, tell me, it's an error. What type of error? It's a very easy question. What type of error it is?
Compilation error.
Compilation error. So previously, when you had different data types of input and when you tried sorting, you got a runtime exception. And whenever you are passing a user-defined class as your generic and trying to sort it, it's a compile time error. Then can't we sort user-defined class input? If you ask me, we can sort it. Okay. How is that possible? There comes the concept of comparable and comparator, which is an interface. So the concept is whenever you are trying to sort a user-defined input, you cannot directly go with the sort method. Instead, you should rely on the concept called comparable and comparator. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So is there anyone aware or heard about the comparator comparable interface?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So let me give you an example for the same. So I will create a separate package for that. Form.cg dot comparable and comparator. Okay, in which since we are already done with the person class, I'll go with the person class, but maybe we'll create a separate one instead of reusing it. Okay, and then I will create one more class. Since we have two interfaces, comparable and comparator, I will create one for comparable, one for comparator, and one main class. So I'll say list demo. And this is not applicable only for your list interface. It is applicable for all other interfaces also. Okay. Okay. So now here, I would like to create variables. Now you guys tell me what all variables we can create for the person class.
Name.
Name. Okay. So I will go creating name. I'll say private string name. Maybe instead of age, I'll go with city. Either is fine, your choice. Whenever you are practicing, you can give your own. And since it is private in nature, I go generating getters and setters for that. And I will also generate constructor non-argument constructor and argumented constructor also. Next, I will be generating toString method. Done. So now we will create a general class only. Then I'll tell you how do we convert it to a comparable and comparator. Okay. So next we will create the student class. So coming here for your student, what all input can I receive it for student?
Register number.
Okay, int, I'll say roll number. Obviously name, which was a very most important input. Next, maybe I'll say,
Yes.
yeah, one more float type, which says CGPA. Marks CGPA or percentage, let it be anything. Okay, so here I will create as usual everything. First, I'll go generating getters and setters. Next, I will generate constructor and constructor using fields. Then finally the toString method. Okay, I hope there are no doubts in this, and let me close everything and I'll just have my person in comparable comparator interface, student in comparable comparator interface, package, and your list demo. Now, I am going to create, in case if you wanted to go with your either comparable or comparator, first and foremost thing is you have to create an object and pass the inputs to that. Okay, so now here I will create a object. I will say an object of array list. And I'll get the permission. And I'll say it points to, and I'll say student list, and I'll get the permission of your list. Okay, now I'll make sure the generic is student and the other end generic mentioning is optional. Okay, if you want, you can mention it. Now, in case if I wanted to add the student information, what will I do? Student list dot add, and I'll say new student, and first one was roll number, I'll say 11, and the name I'll go with some random names, Pooja, and the CGPA was 7.8 F, which was a float. And I wanted to give a collection of input, and in this case I will say 21, 13, 41, and name Nikita, Deepa, and Neha. Then, and percentage 8.5, 6.8, 7.2 F. So I've given a list of inputs. Now when I try printing my student list, I'll be able to see my student list being printed. But it is printed in the order of insertion. In case if I wanted to sort it out, maybe I'll give a heading saying this is before sorting. This output is before sorting. In case if I wanted to get it after sorting, okay, I wanted to sort it. How will I sort? I will say collections dot sort, but that doesn't works. Okay, when I say student list, it doesn't works for your user defined one. You get a compile time error. So what will you do is you go for your student class and you will say this implements comparable interface, which is going to have the generic of student type itself. And when you go, see, first of all, what does this comparable interface has? I'll show you. So this comparable interface has a method called compare to. Why are we not able to do sorting for your user defined input is it has an object type of input. And inside that object, you have multiple inputs. It's not a single value, multiple values. On the basis of what the sorting should happen, the student, the compiler is not aware. That is why you get a compile time error. Okay. So now you have to inform the compiler how you wanted to sort it. That is what we are going to write it up now. Is that clear? Why are we using comparable interface?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Now, how does this compare to method works? That you should understand. For that, you have to go to compare to method. So here, maybe it would have been mentioned. Let me minimize this. Yeah, so comparable interface compares this object, means the current object, with the specified objects, and it ends up giving you a negative value or a positive integer or a zero. When it gets negative, less than. When it gets zero, it is equal. When it is positive, it is greater than. The comparison is less than or greater than or equals to. Accordingly, you get your output. So based on this, we are going to write a logic. So coming here, you have to implement the compare to method. So the signature was added over here. I would like to say it should return me. Okay, already the return is here. Okay, it should return me what it told, compares this object with the mentioned object. So I will say this dot. On the basis of which input? We have three inputs. It's your choice on which basis. Now, in case if I say CGPA, this dot CGPA minus mentioned object is O. So, O dot CGPA. Is that clear? Yes, no?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, why are we getting error? Because the method's return type is integer and we are trying to pass a float input. So here you do a typecasting. So here after this conversion, give an integer output. Clear? And you have to give a bracket because this is casting should happen to the result of this operation. Now see here. Your list demo error is sorted. Now when I run my code, after sorting, could you see the output depending on your CGPA? Have a look and tell me. 6.8, 7.8, 8.5 and 77.2. I have given 77. It is 7.2. Let me rerun. Could you see it is in the order? Yes or no?
Yes,
In case, yeah. In case if you do not want to go with CGPA, you wanted to go with name. I guess name was the variable name. Yeah. You can go with name. Now see here. Okay, you need not want to cast it to integer now. I remove this casting. Instead, you have to, this ends up giving you a non-primitive string input. So you cannot just like that write it and cast it, because casting is possible only for the primitive data type. Okay. So instead of that, you will say this dot name dot compare to. You call the compare to. For string, you have to go with compare to. And you give this O dot name. Okay. Now when I run my code, you get your output in the order of your name. Deepa, Neha, Nikita, and Pooja. So in case if you are going with your user defined input, if you wanted to sort it, and at a time if you wanted to sort only one, okay, because comparable is a functional interface. Okay, what is functional interface? The interface which is designed only to perform one function. That is functional interface, because it has only one method compared to. So at a time, it can return only one output. Okay. In case if I try doing use of one more, I say, ma'am, I wanted to compare name also. I wanted to compare the CGPA also. I'll give this CGPA minus O dot CGPA, and I will go with typecasting. Now, if I do this, what happens? Can I give more than one method in a similar class with the same type of argument and same number of argument? Can I do that? Yes or no? No, correct? Because that is not possible. So, in case if your requirement is you wanted to sort your user-defined input, and only one based sorting, I mean, you should do sorting on the basis of only one variable. Then you go with comparable interface. In case if you wanted to do sorting with more than one inputs at a time, then you go with comparator. What would you do for that? I'll tell you now. Before that, is everyone clear with comparable interface?
Yes,
Raise
ma'am.
up your hands, people who are clear. Okay, good. So now in case if you wanted to do the comparison, I mean sorting using comparator, I will go for the percentage class. Now here, I will create or else I will create it inside this class only. I mean, not it's an inner class, the class. Okay, I have a .java file which is person. This class starts and ends here. After this, I'm creating one more class which is sort by name. Sorry, one class by sort by name and another class sort by city. Okay. Now, how will you use the concept of comparator? You can say implements comparator, and you say implements comparator. Done. This also has, first you have to get the permission, which is under a util package. Next, you have to add the implemented method. This is also almost the same only, whatever we did previously, right? The same thing only I'm going to do. I will say you comparable interface will compare this object with a specified object. Comparator expects you to tell two different objects which you wanted to compare. So I'll say the first object's name, you are comparing it, and compare to 1 minute. We are not getting the suggestion of getter. Let me check. Okay, yeah. So we forgot that it is a general object. You have to tell which object you are working on. You are working on person, right? So I'll say person, and here also person. It is person class, correct? Person. So I forgot to modify that. Now you will get in P1, you will have the name because I'm sorting by name. And I wanted to compare with the second object name. And that should be returned as your output. And you have to give the generic of person. Only then it knows that it accepts only generic input. Now your error is sorted. Now over here also, you give the generic of person and the parameters, I mean the arguments are person P1, person P2. And you are going to return output with respect to city. So you will say P1 dot get city compared with P2 dot get city. So basically, here you are comparing two mentioned object. In comparable, you compare this object with the mentioned object. Now this is done. Now coming back to your list demo. Now you have to create first object of your person. So what I'll do is, I'll comment all this. And you say list person list is equal to new array list, and you get the permission. Okay, I didn't give the generic. Okay, done. So now how do you, okay, array list L capital. Done. So now you will say person list dot add. What all inputs you have? First of all, new person. And for person, what all inputs you have to give? Name and city alone. So name, I'll use the same names. Neha. I'll say Bangalore. And I wanted to add some more inputs. I'll say Nikita, Ankita, and Pooja. I'll give that. So I have given some inputs. Now, how do you sort? Whenever you are sorting inputs with the help of comparator, make sure the similar syntax, but first of all, I'll print it. Yeah. So here we have before sorting. So I'll print before sorting. The person list okay, and after sorting, this is after sorting. In between, you are going to write the logic. So as usual, collections dot sort, and you go with person list, but you have to tell on which basis. Now, when you say just person list collection, again, it doesn't know on which basis, correct? So how do you inform that? You will create the object of your requirement. In case if you wanted to sort by name, you create object of the class which does the sort by name. New sort by name. Now your output will be with respect to name. Ankita, Neha, Nikita and Pooja. In case if I say sort by city, I guess. Yeah. Sort by city. In case if I say sort by city, your sorting will be with respect to city. Bangalore, Delhi, Mumbai and Pune. So comparable, at a time you can do one sorting by implementing it, and here you can do more than one sorting, and there is a difference in syntax. Clear for everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, people are clear with this. Please do raise up your hand. Okay, great. So quickly we will move on for the attendance, and people from B66, let me know your names.